Hello, my name is Lauren James, and I am the Yoga and Fitness Program Coordinator at the McFetridge Sports Center, and welcome to a Thorough Thursday. So every Thursday through the month of May, I will be breaking down a pose and very thoroughly describing that pose or movement or transition or whatever it may be. But today we are going to talk about Adho Mukha Svanasana, which is downward facing dog. And so we're going to get into a lot of the details and descriptions of downward facing dog very thoroughly because it is a thorough Thursday. So thank you for joining me. So we are going to start in tabletop. And this is where we really come into downward facing dog most often. So from tabletop, with the knees under the hips and the hands under the shoulders, if we were to come into downward facing dog right from here, our stance would be too short. So oftentimes you'll hear teachers say, walk your hands a half of a handprint forward. I was always taught a full handprint forward because I studied Iyengar yoga. And so if you're working with a teacher who says a half of a handprint forward, they're not wrong. It's just a little bit of a different style. And so one's not wrong, one's not right. It's just a different take. And so you choose what feels best in your body and what makes sense for what you're about to do. So I always encourage students walk their hands one whole handprint closer to the top of the mat, farther away from the knees, and you spread your fingers as wide as possible. Now here's where we already have some tricky actions going on. So what I often encourage beginning students to do is to turn their hands so their pointer finger points towards the top of the mat. But if you're a more seasoned or experienced practitioner, you might be able to turn your hand so that your middle finger points forward to the top of your mat. It's a very subtle difference, but it will have this domino effect. Everything always has a domino effect or a snowball effect. We always start from the ground up, so whatever is touching the ground, not just necessarily always your feet, but whatever's touching the ground, and everything has this sort of upward again snowball effect. So that is going to change the rotation of the arms. And so however you position your hands, what we're looking for is the creases of the elbows, the pit of the elbow, the eye of the elbow, however you need to think of it. The crease of the elbow, this line, should be facing forward towards the top of your mat, forward towards the front of the room. And so if you turn the hands out, like I recommend for beginners, that often is much easier to get the crease of the elbow forward. But maybe you can still accomplish that with the middle finger forward. And so that's really something that you have to pay attention to. Now, as you turn the creases of your elbows forward, notice it's really subtle, so you might not be able to see it on camera in my body, but if you try this on your own, you'll probably see that the base of your pointer finger lifts up off the ground. The more that you turn the crease of the elbow over to the side and away, externally rotate the shoulder, again, the base of the pointer finger is going to lift up off the ground, but in reality, that should be taking most of the weight in your hand in this pose. The base of the pointer finger and the webbing between your pointer finger and your thumb, this space should be taking most of the weight in your hands in any sort of tabletop plank down dog position. And so that really needs to be grounded so then we can relieve tension and weight off of the wrist. The wrist was not meant to be taking all of this weight. And so you've got to push the base of the pointer finger down as you turn the creases of your elbows out. That is going to help the shoulder be in a much safer position because your shoulders are very vulnerable. And what we do in downward facing dog, while it benefits the shoulders, it's very unusual for the shoulders to do that. Because I want you to think about in an average day, how often do you do this with weight on your hands, right? Never, probably. Your arms are always down. Your arms are usually, maybe you're resting your hands on a keyboard or holding onto a phone, but you're not really putting pressure on the wrists, and your arms are usually down by the sides of your body. So we flip that and we put pressure on, and so we've really got to be thoughtful about where is that pressure. So again, walk the hands one whole handprint closer. Middle finger or pointer fingers pointing forward, that's your call, but the creases of the elbows forward. And even though the creases of the elbows are forward, push the base of the pointer finger down and the webbing between the pointer finger and the thumb down. Okay, we've got that going. Now we hook the toes under. Stretch through the bottoms of the feet, push the hands and the feet down, lift the knees, and then reach the sit bones up towards the sky. And the hope is that in downward facing dog from the side, you look like an upside down V, or you make a triangle with your mat. Now, oftentimes people prioritize straightening their legs. They insist on straightening their legs and pushing the heels into the floor. Now, this is not a priority in the pose. It really should not be your priority. Your priority in this pose is your spine. So what that means for most of us is bending the knees a little bit, letting the heels lift up off the ground, and allowing the belly to come toward the thighs as you reach your sit bones to the sky and push your hands into the floor. So really, your hips and your hands should be feeling like they're being pulled into opposite directions. You're not just letting your hands rest on the floor. You're pushing your hands, spreading your fingers, push the base of the pointer finger down as you reach your sit bones to the sky. Now, we're not looking for a back bend like I'm sort of in here. We're not looking for that. That's too much. But oftentimes new students do a little bit of the opposite. They round in their spine because they insist on straightening their legs. But if their lower back is tight, if the legs go straight, then the spine rounds. And we're not looking for a rounded spine. We're looking again for a longer neutral spine. So we're not looking for a back bend or a forward bend. Downward facing dog really is a spinal lengthener. Your spine should feel very long in that shape. And so we want to release the tension of the lower back because, again, thinking about how you are most of the day, you're upright. And so the weight of your upper body gets pushed into your lower back. And so downward facing dog, we take it as often as we do because we allow the lower back to breathe a little bit. We give it some space. The weight of gravity against our body now allows things to shift very differently, which is really helpful for your lower back if you allow that lengthening. So again, most new students often insist on straightening their legs, pushing the heels into the floor, but then that creates a rounded forward bending sort of cat pose in the spine. This is not what we're going for. In my body right now, I feel a deep stretch in my calves and through the backs of my knees, but nothing in the spine, nothing in the shoulders. And that's where we really want to get. So we again lift the heels, bend the knees, and allow the spine to lengthen, pushing the hands into the floor like you're pushing the earth away from you. Okay, and we want to keep the head heavy. For me, I'm often looking at my toes or my ankles or sort of the ankle crease, and that's okay. You want to make sure you're at least looking sort of down towards your legs or your feet, certainly not forward. Notice the shape of my spine from the crown of the head to the hips. I'm putting this kink in that shape, and so we just want to let the head hang and feel heavy. And then maybe over time, your heels will start to touch the ground and you can start to straighten your legs. And when I say over time, I mean that in two ways. One, over time, meaning within the length of the yoga practice. So if you're practicing yoga for an hour, maybe the first half hour, you allow that little bend in the knees or a deep bend in the knees. And as the practice goes on and you feel like you're getting more and more warmed up, maybe you allow the legs to straighten a little bit more, as long as you can maintain the integrity in the spine, because that really is your priority. But when I say your heels might fall to the floor over time, the other way I mean that is in overtime, meaning after years of practicing. So maybe after even 3 years of practicing, maybe your heels are still far away from the ground and maybe they're just as far as they were 3 years ago. That's okay. The hamstrings and the calves and the glutes are all very, very tight on most people. So there's no expectation that your heels will touch the ground. And I truly mean that it might take years of regular practicing yoga for several hours a week. And then maybe after several years, your heels will touch the ground. And I think that that's really important, especially for beginner students to know, because I think that somehow beginner students all have this idea that your heels need to be on the ground. And if you push your heels into the ground when they're not ready, you're going to overstretch. the hamstrings and the calves, and you're also, again, not going to get the benefits in the lower back, which is really, again, one of the biggest reasons we do this pose and one of its biggest benefits it has to offer. So know that as you're moving through a yoga class, there's no expectation that your heels will touch the ground. Your heels might be really far off the ground. You might have a really deep bend in your knees, but manipulate your downward facing dog, your Adho Mukha Svanasana, so that it best suits mostly your back. So when you're in downward facing dog, it might mean bending the knees, it might mean whatever it is, to really feel that lengthening through the spine, especially the lower back. Take some tension off your lower back. It deserves a break. So thank you so much for joining me. This was a thorough Thursday, working on Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog, all of the thorough details that we don't really have time to get over in a yoga class, in a group setting. So again, my name is Lauren. I'm the Yoga and Fitness Program Coordinator at McFetridge, and I hope to see you there really soon. Thank you. Bye.